Good afternoon. No, not quite afternoon. Good morning. This is Sue with MageeNews.com, and I really do have a special guest with me today. Of course, I think all my guests are special.
Well, thank you.
But with me today is U.S. House of Representative Michael Guest. And I was so glad that he came to see us. It's hard for us to get our schedules together, but it's always good to check on these people in Simpson County. So we're just going to jump right into our questions. And let me tell you, I've got a load of them. But I do want to start with the government shutdown.
Yes, ma'am.
I know that you vote 100% with Trump.
Yes.
And you have been behind him all the way. Tell us, what does a shutdown mean? How long do you think it'll last, and how's it going to affect us?
So we are currently at the start of the month, so now we're in the third week of a government shutdown. Most people that I speak to are not directly impacted. They may be indirectly impacted, but the mail is still being delivered. People still get their Social Security checks, Medicare, Medicaid. Those people who are dependent on VA services, those services are still available. A large majority of the federal workforce has been deemed essential, which means they are continuing to come to work. And I think the president has done a good job of trying to minimize the impact of the shutdown. We saw this week where he said he was going to be able to find funds to pay the military. He was looking to find funds to be able to pay our federal law enforcement. He's using money generated from the tariffs to support the WIC program, nutritional program for new mothers. And so the president has done a very good job of minimizing the impact on everyday Americans. But we are now in the third week of a government shutdown. The House of Representatives passed a continuing resolution, passed a bill that would keep the government funded at existing levels to give us more time to work through the appropriations process. We sent that to the Senate 3 weeks ago. And because the Senate has a rule known as the filibuster, which requires that there be 60 votes to pass most pieces of legislation, including a CR or any funding bills, it requires Democrat support. There have been several Democrats, 3 Democrats, who have actually joined with Republicans in the Senate to pass that CR, but there still need to be additional Democrats who come on board if we are going to reopen the government. And so that's where we are right now. The Democrats have set a list of demands that they want to see met before they would agree to reopen the government, and those demands are unreasonable. Doing things such as they want to reinstate the Obamacare enhanced subsidies program, which will cost in and of itself, just that program alone, $500 billion.
Wow.
And so, and this is for opening the government for 7 weeks. They also want to roll back some of the rescissions that the president put in place during some previous legislation. They want to roll back part of the president's One Big Beautiful Bill. And so the demands are unreasonable. They are designed to keep the government closed. They are putting politics over the American people. And I hope that as we see the government shutdown continue, that at some point Democrats will come along. They will reopen the government. If they want to have a talk on health care, Ms. Sue, we can have that talk, and we've offered to have that talk once the government's reopened. And if they want to talk about the enhanced Obamacare subsidies, then I think that is a conversation that we can talk about. But if we're going to do that, we need to talk about several things. We need to talk about making sure that we put income limits on that. What most people don't know is that 35% of the enhanced Obamacare subsidies go to families making $100,000 or more.
I read that, and I was like, oh my gosh.
And so, this isn't a program that just covers people right at the poverty level. I mean, we have people who are making 6 figures as a family who are getting Obamacare subsidies. We also have what are called phantom policies, where it is believed that we're somewhere between 2 and 5 million of the policies that are written are not actual individuals. So you've got the waste, the fraud, and abuse that Republicans are trying to weed out. And so we've got to put guardrails on the programs to make sure that we're not seeing that waste, fraud, and abuse. And the most important thing is, if this is important enough by the Democrats to shut down the federal government, tell fellow Republicans what you are willing to do to pay for this program.
Right.
If this is the most important thing that is facing the American public, surely there are then Democrat programs where they could cut and move those funds into this program to continue these subsidies. And so these are conversations that can't take place in a government shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's important to reopen the government. And again, I think that a lot of this is being driven by the far left, pressure that they're putting on Chuck Schumer and others in the Senate to keep the government closed and to try to blunt some of the momentum that we've seen that Donald Trump and Republicans have had throughout this Congress.
I tell you what, it's something. It's something. I don't know. I don't know. Because when you try to figure out where you're going to get that money,
yes, ma'am.
It's interesting. Well, we're going to go a little bit about some things around here.
Yes.
What federal resources or grants are available to small towns like Magee, Mendenhall, Harrisville, Delo? What can we as a small county look for in grants?
Yes, ma'am. And yeah, so there are a number of grant programs out there through different federal agencies. Matter of fact, later today, I'm going to be meeting with some of the supervisors and the sheriff about some potential grant for the community center that they have here in Mendenhall, and about ways in which we can improve that, maybe including a law enforcement component, such as moving the 911 dispatch. Making that more of a shelter for a time of inclement weather. And so I'm going to actually be meeting later today with supervisors and the sheriff, emergency management coordinator, to see what we can do to help assist with that. But our office routinely tries to work with our local counties and municipalities, particularly on infrastructure programs. Those are things which we have prioritized as an office: roads, bridges, water, sewage, the things that impact everyone within our community. And so we have been able to do that by either both federal grants that we sometimes have, and then there are also community-directed projects where we work with individual cities, individual communities on projects that are as much as possible shovel-ready, not projects which are just in the design stage, but where we've got the design, where we've acquired the right-of-way acquisition, and then we need federal dollars just to push this project across the finish line.
Well, and that really does answer my other question, because one of the main problems we have in Magee, and we just don't have it.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's almost like every time we pave a road, we have to dig it up 3 weeks later because there's a water break.
Yes,
we
ma'am.
have constant water breaks. So what you're saying is that there are programs in process, and we just need to get on with it.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and some of those, do require, you're talking about a master plan. And so if you're going to come in and you're going to repave a road, if there's the potential for water and sewage work, let's try to get that project all done at the same time. As we're looking at having to take that road up, let's repair the infrastructure under the road so that then when we come in and we fix the road, then we don't have to come back later. And so some of that requires the city, the county to have that master plan as to how they're going to work through that. But look, this is common in every county throughout the state. There are growing infrastructure needs. We know that the cost of infrastructure has gone up as far as the materials, whether it be asphalt or cement. Also that labor costs have gone up, and so the projects that used to could be done at a cheaper cost now are costing the cities, the counties more money. But that is where we can step in and we can help. The federal government doesn't have an unlimited amount of money.
That's true.
And so part of that too is why we're looking for these shovel-ready jobs, because if you get a project that may be a great project, but if you're just in the design phase, if you need federal dollars for the design phase, then there's a great likelihood that you would need federal dollars later on to continue the project down the road. And so that's kind of where we're looking at least with our office. Now, there are some grant programs available for some of those planning purposes, but things specifically through our office, through the congressionally directed spending, again, we try to have those programs as shovel ready as possible.
Well, that makes sense. That makes sense. We need to be ready, but getting ready costs money.
It does.
So it puts you in that position of, well, do we go pave the street or do we do this? And it goes back and forth. We just went through a paving time, and we were just so excited we were going to get this pavement. You can't even tell.
Yes,
I mean, it takes such a little bit.
And those paving dollars don't go as far as they used to. And so the
They sure
same
don't.
amount of money now could have probably paved, maybe twice as much road, 4 or 5 years ago, at least pre-COVID, than they can pave now.
It's something. Okay. Is there a plan to modernize communication systems for emergency responses in rural areas? Because we're in a rural area, we are aware, I think, even more of the need for a conjoining
Yes, ma'am.
EMS program.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything coming toward our area that would help with this?
That would be through MEMA. And so there are federal dollars that go to MEMA, which is the Mississippi Emergency Management Association or agency, I guess. And so MEMA then would be responsible for coordinating that across the state. So the federal government is not directly involved in the planning or the rollout of that, but there is federal funding that goes to MEMA that MEMA will use.
So we need to just harass MEMA.
Well, yes, ma'am, and I think a lot of that is, it is best to have these programs be locally led instead of led on the federal level. And so I think you can get more of a bang for your buck. You can individualize the program for the needs of, the needs in Mississippi are going to be very different than the needs of, say, Southern California, because, here we have some very rural areas versus a lot of big urban areas. And so MEMA would be the agency that would be spearheading that. And again, I understand from my prior role as a district attorney the importance that our emergency responders, our law enforcement, be able to have that direct line of communication. We need to have individual law enforcement agencies that can speak with one another.
Right.
And they also need to be able to speak with our first responders, our ambulance, our fire. Particularly in the case of some big emergency, if we have another, say something like Katrina, which we hope and pray we don't see again in our lifetime, we know that the importance of communication, particularly early on in that initial coordination.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. What do you think is being done? Oh, I know what it is I wanted to talk to you about. I just remembered. We love our Colin Community College here in Simpson County. The Simpson County branch is doing fantastic. And we are so proud of what is being done on the federal level to support these junior colleges.
We're doing some things in the workforce training aspect. So that there are federal funds that come down, particularly on the workforce training. We just have that's something that's kind of been prioritized both on the state level and the federal level. Because if you look at your community colleges, they now kind of serve a dual role. Used to, they were kind of the entry level to going on to a four-year university. And they still serve that role, but they also serve an important role of working in our communities with local needs and developing workforce for individual businesses or certain areas where there is a need. And so that is where we have started to see some more federal investment in some of the workforce training. I know often we will see our presidents from our local community colleges either meet with me here personally or they'll come to D.C. When they are up there doing some of their national fly-in visits, talking about some of the needs. But our community colleges play a very vital, very important role. We're beginning to see that those enrollment rates in many of the colleges, and I can't speak for all, are continuing to move up. And we have more and more individuals taking advantage of our community college. And I think that is great. I think as far as where you can get the biggest bang for your buck as far as a great education at an affordable cost, our community colleges do a magnificent job with that.
They really do. It's almost like a changed system from the way it used to be. How can we better prepare high school students and get them to be willing to go into the workforce? What can we do?
I think the state has done a good job of rolling out programs in various parts of our state where we do now have workforce training. Some places call academies. Back when we were in school, it was called VOTEC, where individuals who were be able to have an educational path where either they could look toward wanting to go to a four-year university or they could look at wanting to do workforce training there at the high school level, so that once they graduated from high school, they would have the necessary skills to go in at generally an entry-level position at various jobs, whether that be electrical work, nursing, law enforcement, some of those medical tech records, things like that. And so we do have schools that are beginning to invest in these different academies, and I think that is paying benefit. I've got to give a lot of that credit to the state. The state takes much of the federal dollars, and then the state then decides how those federal dollars are spent. And we've seen the legislature under Governor Reeves and Lieutenant Governor Hoseman, they are investing more and more in the workforce training at the high schools, and then also, as we talked about a few minutes ago, at the community college level.
I tell you, we are so blessed in Simpson County with our VOTEC Center, our technical center, because I wasn't very familiar with it and started working with it several years ago. And I'm telling you, it's a jewel. Our Simpson County one is fabulous, and they do the best job all the time. Okay, let's see. What federal policies are in place to encourage small businesses in rural areas to locate?
What I feel my role is the best thing that we can do to encourage small business is to get government out of the way. As far as the excessive regulation that we saw, particularly in the last 4 years, we saw administrative agencies, they were continuing to put additional demands, requirements on small businesses. And that is an unfunded mandate, a tax, if you will, on these businesses, where they're having to, in some cases, hire additional individuals just to be compliant with some of the federal regulations. And so what we've tried to do on the federal level is a couple things. One, we've tried to roll back those regulations. What can we do to roll back those regulations? And then what can we do to grow the economy so businesses have the opportunity to be successful? This is something that we've done, I think, in the tax policy when we extended and expanded the Trump tax cuts of 2017. Now we have certainty in the tax policy. We've encouraged things such as the accelerated depreciation, where businesses now can write off depreciation in a much quicker manner than under the previous law. We've seen, I think, interest rates begin to come down. That is important for businesses who have to borrow money. With the interest rates coming down, we've also seen mortgage rates begin to come down, which are important to a first-time home buyer or really anybody who's looking at buying a home. And we've seen the markets at least have reached near all-time highs just within the last several weeks. And so I believe that the economy is going to continue to grow. I think the president understands the importance of a strong economy. And so I think with a strong economy, I think with the reduction in regulations, I think with certainty in the tax rates, that's going to help all our businesses across the spectrum, from small businesses, mid-size, all the way up to larger companies.
I agree with you on that completely. One thing that's been a big talk about is broadband. And I know that we've continuously worked to get it everywhere. How do you see this coming with the federal government?
This is a kind of a federal pass-through. So the federal government then sends the money down to the state. The state has invested that money through the BEAM office. Sally Doty heads up the BEAM office. And so they then take the federal dollars along with the state dollars, and they then are looking at then partnering with private companies. So you get that public-private partnership. So they are taking the public dollars, they are leveraging them with private dollars to make those dollars go further, to allow more miles of broadband to be installed. I think if you look at, what's considered infrastructure, I think broadband is now actually considered infrastructure. Roads, bridges, water, sewage, and now broadband. Because it's so important for our communities and what we do every day. I mean, high-speed internet used to be a luxury. Now it's more of a necessity because we know more and more people are working from home. They're going to school from home. They're worshiping from home. They're shopping from home. They're seeing their doctors by way of telemedicine from home. And so I believe that the state has a plan to continue to build out broadband. The federal government will be a part of that, in that there will be federal dollars that we will continue to send to the state level. And the goal is as quickly as possible to make sure that we have complete coverage across the state. And I know our rural co-ops have done a good job.
They really have.
In meeting with many of our rural co-ops, they've taken advantage of some of those programs that have been offered. They have existing infrastructure already, and that there are already electric power lines that have run to their home, and now they're being able to use that existing infrastructure to come in and deliver broadband to many of their power customers. And so that has been extremely beneficial, again, to those co-ops that have chosen to opt in and taken advantage of that program.
I was glad to see that. I thought, how are you ever going to find all these people? But it was almost like you say, it was the same way as with electricity
Yes,
at the
ma'am.
beginning. So that's going to be good. I do want to ask you, how do you think the national border policy affects Mississippi communities?
I think it affects the economy as a whole, and then it indirectly affects Mississippi because of that. What we have seen is President Trump, when he was campaigning, he pledged that he was going to secure the southern border if elected. When he was sworn in, the president did several things. He declared a state of emergency on the southern border. He surged resources to the southern border. He ended the catch and release programs of the Biden-Harris administration, and he reinstated Remain in Mexico. Since that time, we have seen the border encounters along the southwest border. They are at a 50-year historic low. If these numbers continue to project out like we're seeing, we will have the lowest number of border encounters that we have seen in half a century. And so I give that credit to the president for his aggressive action. And the president was right and Congress was right when in the prior administration when they said they needed additional authorities to secure the border. And we said, no, you have the authority. You just have to now use those authorities and you have to enforce the law. And that's what the president has done. Now, what Congress has done is Congress wants to make sure we maintain that border security. So in the budget reconciliation bill, also known as the One Big Beautiful Bill, we funded 700 miles of additional border wall, 800 miles of river barrier. We have put funding in place to hire an additional 3,000 Customs and Border Patrol agents. And we are investing $3.5 billion in new technology along the border to help us detect and ultimately defeat those individuals who are involved in drug smuggling and human trafficking. And so by doing that, what we are going to see is we're going to see that those numbers are going to continue to remain low, of individuals coming across the border. And we're also going to be able to do a better job of interdicting narcotics that are coming into the country. We've seen the impact that's had in every community. For the last several years, the leading cause of death for individuals 18 to 45 has been drug overdose. Much of that associated with fentanyl, which has come across our unsecured southern border. And so now that the border is secure, those agents who were before having to process people who were being apprehended at the border and then released into the interior under the previous administration, now they're able to direct their time and their energy and their efforts to stopping narcotics from coming in the country.
And we've got to do it.
And I think that that's going to have an impact in every community because we all know individuals that have been touched by overdose, and this is a way for us to reverse that alarming trend.
Okay. What keeps you most encouraged about Mississippi's future?
Look, there's a lot of great things happening in Mississippi. And look, that's one of the things I get to serve as an ambassador, if you will, of the great things happening in Mississippi. When I talk about the fact that Mississippi is now becoming a national hub for data centers.
Isn't that something?
And you look at the investment that is pouring into Mississippi. We know that Amazon Web Services roughly 2 years ago announced that they were building not one, but 2 hyperlink data centers in Madison County. The initial investment, they said, was going to be $10 billion. Now I'm led to believe that investment ultimately is going to be between $15 and $20 billion just on that data center.
Unbelievable.
Over in East Mississippi, Compass is investing $10 billion in a data center in Lauderdale County. And in Rankin County, they just announced a $6 billion investment for a 3rd data center.
Can we get them this way?
Well,
we need them down Highway 49.
I will tell you, Sue, that I am aware of 2 other counties that are currently in negotiations with data centers and the electric power supply. And so there is a possibility that we could have an additional 1 or 2 more data centers who would make an announcement sometime between now and next spring that they're coming to Mississippi. And so, these are great investments in our state.
Mm-hmm.
Something that many of us, including myself, would have found to be something unforeseeable just a couple of years ago.
That's the truth.
And so, so when I'm talking about Mississippi, I'm talking about that. I'm talking about our supercomputer centers that are located in Mississippi. Starkville has the Orion supercomputer, one of the fastest supercomputers in all of academia. Over at Erdick, the Army Corps of Engineers has their main supercomputer located there in Vicksburg, Mississippi. And the United States Navy has one of their main supercomputing centers located there. It's in a space center. So we have 3 major supercomputers located here. Our supercomputing capacity in Mississippi is one of the highest per capita in the entire country. When I'm on the coast, I'm down there and I'm visiting with our shipbuilders down there. We've got Ingalls Shipyard, the largest private employer in the state of Mississippi. And we actually have the largest shipbuilding facility in the entire country there at Ingalls. They're in the process of building a dozen different ships for the Navy and Coast Guard, and they have another dozen ships that are under contract. So as soon as they're able to get these ships off the shipyard, they're able to then have an additional dozen ships that they're able to backfill. I was at Bollinger Shipyard there. They are building the first domestically produced icebreaker for the United States Coast Guard in over a quarter century. Went to a place called Siemens Composite. They are building the bow dome for the Columbia-class submarine here in Mississippi. And so all of these great things that are happening in Mississippi, and, of course, continue to talk about Nissan, continue to talk about Toyota, their investment that they've had. We talk about the Mississippi Miracle as it relates to our educational scores, and so I tell people who live in this state, this is a great time to be in Mississippi. We have so much to be proud of, so much to build on, and I'm just glad that I get to serve in a time in which we see Mississippi has really grown and excelled. And so regardless of where you live in the state, I think we all can be extremely proud of what's happening in Mississippi.
I tell you make me want to get up and clap. It's so good. They're so good. How can people reach you if they have problems with their passport, if they have problems with their Social Security? Information.
So our main office is in Brandon. We actually have 3 offices. Main office is in Brandon. We also have a district office in Meridian for those people who may be watching, living closer to the Meridian area, and a district office in Starkville. So those are our 3 physical locations. So the easiest thing would be just to go to the internet, Google Congressman Michael Guest. You will see all the locations of their offices plus our phone number. So you can contact us by phone. You don't have to come in. And look, we routinely help people that have issues with the federal government. And that's one thing that people don't really associate my office with. When they think about someone serving in Congress, they think about our service in D.C. when we're up there debating legislation, introducing bills, voting on bills on the floor. But I have a dedicated staff in Mississippi who deal with what we call constituent service issues. Individuals who have a problem with the VA. Maybe you're a veteran and you're not getting the care that you need at the VA. Maybe you're someone who is owed an IRS tax refund and you can't get your refund. We help people who are truly qualified for disability who were not able to get disability, who have been denied. And then we talk to also, you mentioned passports. We help people who are having issues getting passports so that they can travel out of the country. And I tell you, no issue is too small for us. And I'll tell you a quick story very briefly. I had a guy a couple of years ago, was actually at Simpson County at the VFW. Was here, and before a dinner they were having one night, I had gotten here early, was meeting with the different veterans who were there, and I had a veteran who walked up to me. He had a Korean War veteran, so an older veteran, and he introduced himself, and he said, "Look, I want to thank you for the help that your office provided me." And I said, "Well, that is so kind. Would you mind sharing with me what we had done?" Because most of the cases are handled by people within my office, not by me directly. He said, "I'll only tell you, but I'll show you." So he had on a jacket, sports coat, and so he reached into his jacket and he pulled out a pair of glasses and he put them on. And he said, "What he knows about my glasses?" And I said, "Well, sir, you're missing the lens on the right-hand side." He folded them, put them back in his jacket. reached into the other jacket pocket in her pocket, put on another pair of glasses. When he put them on, he had a big smile. He said, these are my new glasses. He said, I was a veteran. He said, I'd been trying to get a pair of glasses from the VA for 3 months.
Oh my gosh.
He said, I contacted your office, and within 3 days, I got a new pair of glasses. He said, I just want you to know how much I appreciate the fact that my office was able to work and help him.
Yes.
And so those are great success stories. That's where we're able to help individuals one case at a time. And so that is something that I take great pride in, that I have such great employees that they're able to, in many cases, I call them miracle workers, that there are cases where people just have been unable to get the results that they need. They run into one roadblock after another. And in many cases, and not every case that we're successful, but we're successful in far more than we fail. But we are willing and able and want to be advocates for the people of the 3rd Congressional District.
That's awesome.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll have that information for you on MageeNews.com. You can check it out. Have a good day.